This is the Ben Herman Show.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I've got another amazing guest on the show today. His name is Matt Radicelli, and he happens to be a coach, serial entrepreneur, presenter, and event pro as well. So he's one of us fellow DJ entrepreneurs, which are one of my favorite people to talk with, by the way. Matt recently sold his largest event-based business called Rock the House that he founded a while back. And then he also founded Mentor Pods, which is a group coaching program. His main things that he loves to do is have kind of a 50-50 split between creative and analytical understanding of all business disciplines. His passion is leveling up business owners and executives. What's up, Matt? How's it going? Welcome to the show.
What's happening, Ben? How are you today?
Good. Definitely. Very well. So I guess I'd love to ask you, before we talk about the big business that you sold, where did it all start? Like, you started off as a DJ as well. When was the start of your DJ journey?
Yeah, the credit goes to my parents. My dad was a DJ and my mom ran a nightclub. She was the bartender and sort of ran things on the operations side. So I ended up in a nightclub. It's a very unique story. I was just around doing my homework in the corners, after school. And bit by bit, my dad started teaching me how to press play. At the time, I was on wax and on cassette decks. And that's how it began. And bit by bit through high school, Ben, like a lot of the people that we know in the industry, it just sort of grew. And I didn't know until I was in my 20s that I was actually cutting my teeth as a businessman, right? So that's how I got started. But yeah, I was a kid, man. I was 7 years old, learning how to spin vinyl, and it was fun.
That's awesome. And then where did the founding of Rock the House start? How old were you?
Well, that story itself is actually a really, really unique thing. So the gentleman, one of my best friends and previous partners, Ryan Konikoff, he's the one that purchased Rock the House in 2019, the first half of it. Ryan and I met, and it was right around the same time that I formed a school dance company, and I was doing teen events. So a lot of the things I was doing in high school were teen promotions parties, had a couple different locations, around the Northeast Ohio area. And he introduced me to my first bat mitzvah. So Rock the House was actually the creation of the entity that seemed to need to be a little bit more legitimate at the time. And that's how the name and the concept was born. So for the first few years of Rock the House existing, we were doing nothing but high-end mitzvahs. We went from 0 mitzvahs to 150 mitzvahs in a very short amount of time in the area. Massive. But that's how it was born.
Wow, that's great. And then how did you take the company to the next level? We shared a conversation, before this podcast, and you had mentioned that Rock the House really ended up becoming kind of this holding company of multiple businesses within the large business, correct?
Yeah, looking back on it, it was because we had the right people in the right seats at the right time. And some people, that I know that are real good friends or colleagues of mine say, man, I wish I had a team like that, or I wish I had that staff or that person. And it just so happens that is the orbit of individuals that it took to do all the magic. So we were a whole bunch of regular, unique people doing amazing things together. So bit by bit, we saw opportunities that came up, whether that was mergers, acquisitions, growth in different sectors of what's happening. And I wouldn't say that we really had lightning in a bottle and skyrocketed, up to the upper left. I think that we saw consistent growth, 10 to 15% annually per year over a long amount of time, which we know comes to some great things. So that sort of growth got us in a position where after 20 years, the company was sizable. And I still firmly believe with everybody that I coach, and it's probably the same for you too, bigger isn't always better. But we had lots of opportunities to stretch our legs and try new things and experiment.
And it sounds like you mainly pursue growth through acquisitions versus startups, correct?
My journey as an entrepreneur, I wasn't really starting anything up that was major or as a distraction from Rock the House. It was sort of like Rock the House was the incubator for different ideas that could have been considered startups, but they were happening under the umbrella of the Rock House family of companies. So I don't know if it's fair to say that I only grow through mergers and acquisitions. I would say that while at Rock the House, most of the ideas that we came up with that were great ideas, we turned into a different business unit or decided to purchase something that was going to help us achieve our goals for what was happening, and we kept it close.
You also touched a little bit about that the way that you were able to grow your company is through great people. Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit about leadership. So what is your leadership approach? What would you say are the main contributing factors towards, leading a team well and contributing towards growth for your company?
My leadership style is one that really emphasizes the idea that we need to grow the person, not the thing. It's important to me to spend copious amounts of time growing people, not things. And whether you're a company or a business that's chosen to want to scale and grow and add people and learn to delegate properly and all the things, or you've decided that that's not for you. You know, we both have clients that are both in those veins, and you know, not everybody wants to build a giant team up. It's important when you do choose to scale and grow a team, whether you're first learning to delegate to contractors like virtual assistants, or you are picking up that first office manager or that first salesperson or the person who's prepping your gear for you. Each individual deserves the trust and respect of understanding that you're investing in them, in their knowledge, in their expertise, in their abilities, understanding that you have their back when it comes to their work-life balance, and that you want to grow with them. You know, so while you're on your path to growth, they're along for the ride, but they have to pull their weight, right? They have to punch their own card. So my management philosophy, although it's changed a lot over the years, I think just because of maturity and experience, I look back on just seeing that the consistencies of things that were successful were when I spent the most time and the most effort in growing the individuals, teaching them to fish, not necessarily just giving them all the answers. That pretty much sums up my philosophy when it comes to leadership and management style.
I love it. So really it's grow the people and the people grow the business.
Absolutely.
There may be a DJ entrepreneur that's, you know, a solo op that's considering maybe getting, you know, dipping their toes into this multi-op thing. What kind of advice would you give them? Because, you know, there may be some mental blocks that's holding them back from taking the leap into true business ownership.
This is the DJ owner who is sort of tickling the idea, unsure, not sure if they should take the leap. Is that where we're at for this?
Yeah. So they're a full-time DJ. They're really the business owner operator, but they're fully booked out. They're turning down gigs. They're the chief everything officer. They'd like to get a little bit of time freedom back as well.
Okay.
They're thinking, you know, I see these multi-op owners that they seem to be living the big life.
Yeah.
But I'm scared of that. I'm scared of taking the first leap.
Yeah, the advice that I would give is probably two really, really simple parts. I like to take complex things and simplify them. You can do it. Number one, go team, rah, rah, you can do it. And the second part is trust people again. So these people that we're talking about in this camp, they come from one of two places. They either learned how to DJ, they discovered that they were great, had the people skills, they're in demand, because you said booked solid, right? So I'm going to take that personality profile and go for it. They either have everything they need to simply decide that they can scale, because even their overflow on a bad day is going to keep other people busy, which is a key to success as a multi-op. Or they got burned by a multi-op in the past because they previously worked for somebody else and they have trust issues. So either way, we have to trust people again in life in order to take the next steps. And at the first side of that, if you're just, you're rapidly growing and you're awesome and you're oversold and stuff, that means you need to learn to delegate. We need to learn to understand that when we bring people on board, we have to build systems and processes. And I'm talking about very basic stuff, like your first employee type stuff. You need to show them what's up and understand they're going to make mistakes and work through those things and embrace that matter. But I think that the biggest piece of advice is learn to trust again, and know that people are going to make mistakes. And if you do that and you can work through it because you need to, then everything's going to be great. It's great first lesson to learn.
Love that advice. Love that advice. Which brings me to another question. Let's say now it's the DJ entrepreneur that's kind of the veteran, right? They've been there, done that. They've hired some folks in the past, some contractors, got burned, right? What kind of advice would you give them in regards to trusting again? Because it's easier said than done, right?
It depends on, I don't want to say the decade, but the circumstance and the time frame upon which they got burned, I think is a little bit different now than it might have been a long time ago. There's an evolution, I would say somewhere between around 5-10 years ago at its soonest, where talented individuals who previously worked for larger multi-ops have decided that they not only have the talent and the skills in order to go out and do it, but that they have the risk tolerance based on the differentials of how people are valuing their time. I would even say that's accelerated since the pandemic, because there was this time when everybody was holding their breath for 5 minutes, right? During the pandemic, when they realized that they can live and survive on less, and that not everything is guaranteed for tomorrow. So there's a much different view in that. So if we try to apply the same types of frameworks, and solutions for problem solving that a veteran DJ had 10 years ago, it's not the same as it is today. And I just think that you can't apply those same rules. I do think, though, that 2 in the hand sometimes is worth 1 in the bush when it comes to somebody who has less years in front of them than they do behind them. And this is probably going to surprise a lot of people that I'm saying this. I don't know that if you're a 45 or 50-year-old single guy that used to work for another multi-op and you're thinking about going out on your own, I don't know if that's the best shot based on what you have going on, based on my or other people's knowledge about how the industry works, unless you're just a really amazing marketer and you're really so good at what you do that you can't beat clients away with a stick on things. It does take time and it does take effort, but we know that the older a DJ gets, the more money they want to make, but for less work. And anybody who's had a multi-op and sees that the generational changes that are happening on the veterans basically say, man, I still love doing this. Well, there's two categories. The guys that are like, I don't love doing this anymore, but I'm still good at it. So let's keep the faucet open. And there's the guys that go, man, I love doing this and I can keep going, but I want to make more money and I want to do slightly less shows because my body can't take it, or my family's frustrated, or whatever it is. So if you're 45 or 50, right, and you're just now arriving at maybe I should start my own company, you've got some long years ahead of you, some rough years ahead of you.
What kind of advice would you give that person? You had mentioned about marketing, right? You should be very well versed in marketing. What kind of advice would you give around putting yourself out there, or marketing your business, acquiring leads, converting?
I'm still a firm believer. Like I know so many people that are successful with paid advertising and other strategies. I know it, and I know all marketing works, but I still rely very heavily on the idea that we need to start with the basics and know that our referral network, our family, our friends, our frienders, that's where everything comes from.
I love that you use the term frienders.
Yeah.
Frienders, right? Frienders. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's a thing. I just know that if the stats that come along with the Mentor Pods program and everybody I've worked with are correct, and that's that 60 or 70% of the leads that everybody's getting should be coming from referrals and referral sources. I'm not saying that the paid stuff isn't great and doesn't work, but it's like that 80-20 rule. I'm going to get most of my results from this thing that doesn't cost me almost anything. So my advice is lean heavily into your local network for the people that you know. Do a good job. Learn the right way how to work your referral network for referral farming. That's the number one thing, or number one piece of advice that I would give to somebody in that situation.
Well, Matt, I'd love to switch gears here for a sec. I'd love to talk about what kind of metrics should a DJ business owner or DJ entrepreneur track in their business. Let's say early on, so as a solo DJ-preneur, and then we'll also talk about the multi-op owner as well. So let's just talk about level 1 first, and then we'll talk about more advanced stuff. All
right. So oddly, the things that I think are more advanced are also the same things that happen at the basic level, because I think that the people that are growing their businesses, and hopefully a lot of people listening today, they're at these wide areas in the journey. The basics come down to business basics for me that get broken up into 4 different categories. Okay. Financial KPIs, sales KPIs, marketing KPIs, and then operational, or we'll call it quality control KPIs. So it's a little bit of a different conversation if we're talking single op solopreneur versus multi-op, but it's not that different. It just means that certain things don't qualify unless you have a team, because you have lighter payroll and other things. So which category do you want to start with first?
Yeah. First and foremost, for those listeners that are wondering what KPI stands for, it stands for Key Performance Indicators. And what I would say is that, I agree with you 100% that for a multi-op, there would be more team metrics as well, right? Like turnover, for instance, team quality, happiness, and so forth, right? Let's talk about, again, for solopreneurs, so let's talk about maybe leads, sales, like bookings, those kinds of KPIs.
Okay. Let's start there. Let's sort of blend the two, the sales and marketing concepts for KPIs and scorecards together. Number 1, I believe you should be sampling these KPIs on a weekly basis. So I think that on a weekly basis, we should be hand scribing the number of leads that we got last week into a spreadsheet to say, last week I got 5 leads. Last week I closed 2 deals. Those 2 deals were worth $2,200 a piece, and I generated $4,400 of business. So right away, I can generate an average dollar sale and essentially the data that I need to generate a rolling closing percentage for the number of leads that I have. If you think about then taking those few leads that you had and then say, okay, where did those leads come from? Which is something that we have to teach and really harp on for newer business owners, to really ask the question, how'd you hear about us? And almost to a second level too. Not only did you hear about us from your venue, what venue was that? And, oh, did you talk to Karen? Great. Outside of that, the costs associated with producing your events as it relates to job costing, Ben, is the most important next KPI that I think is important, which is, it actually leads into financials, but it helps you in sales, If every single time you sell a job, what's that?
We're talking about cost of service then?
Yeah, we're talking about cost of goods sold, so our variable costs. If a young entrepreneur, somebody starting their company or at least evolving their company, doesn't understand what their direct costs are having to do with producing an event, they can't job cost effectively. And if they can't job cost effectively, at the end of the year, they just won't have as much profit as they thought they were supposed to have. So teaching a DJ to understand, to track what their KPIs are for their gross margin percentage in real time, it sort of smacks you in the face every single week or every single month to go, ooh, maybe I'm not selling where I'm supposed to be and I need to get this train back on the tracks. There are some other things that happen though on the sales and or the KPIs. Remember I was talking about if it's a single op versus a team. If you have a team, you want to track the conversion rate or how many deals you're closing per person for the team, and you have a company average. Well, if you have a company average, but you're not looking at the individual level, somebody could be underperforming or performing very poorly, and you would never know it because somebody else is pulling all the weight, right? But that's just one quick example of if you don't have a team, you just do it for yourself. And that's good too.
I think it's so important to track the sales conversion rate for the fact that then you're empowered to actually reverse engineer and really figure out, okay, what's your top line revenue goal that you're trying to shoot for? It's literally just a simple math equation at that point, right?
Yeah.
In regards to the other things that you had mentioned, so for instance, like in KPI, you had mentioned, so we're talking about, what was it again? It was, so you did sales conversion, but you also talked about another one.
Well, when I started on the sales scorecard, I was recommending we track the leads, track the deals won, deals closed, how much money we made, and then what was the average dollar sale, and gross giving margin, us.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So gross margin and also, COGS or cost of sales, right? Or service. What would you say is a healthy gross margin for a DJ company?
Still in this day and age, the healthy margin is about 60%. And people are surprised to hear that 60% is actually the service industry. Any service-based industry in the United States that has assets that go along with said service, 60% is the average for that. So you could still be at 40 or 45 and be healthy. And you could be a premium business or a boutique business that's in the high 70s and still be healthy. But that average gross margin is going to be 60%. And to review, what that means is you charge the client $10,000, you take away all the fees that you're paying the DJ, the credit card fees, you've got your cost of fuel, you're renting a truck maybe, you're paying sales commission. All these are variable costs that have to do with producing that one event. If we charged $10,000 and we were left with $6,000 after we paid all that stuff out, we would have a 60% gross margin.
I'm so glad that you actually included card processing as well, merchant fees.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks forget that one as a part of the COGS, right? It's a pesky little fee that escapes us, but I'm glad that you actually included that in that metric as well.
Well, in some people, right, they pass the cost on to the client, so then they bury it inside their fixed expenses. It's actually, it moves the needle on your gross margin. Even if you're billing for it, you still need to include it in what's happening in order to have an accurate gross margin percentage, because it's not a fixed expense. So, and fixed expenses, just to give that definition to everybody listening, is that if you have an expense, whether you have one event or 1,000 events in a year, that's a fixed expense. You have to pay it no matter what. But we never want a variable expense to live in our fixed expenses.
I can definitely tell that we seem to have very similar information that we've learned from, because I've definitely heard of the 60-40 split as well. What we tend to coach our clients on is try to actually shoot for the 70%. So 70-30 split as a benchmark, because that means that there's actual profit left, right? A lot of times what I've found, even from my personal experience, doing a 60-40 split tends to still have very skinny net profit margins, right? So depending on, of course, how heavy you run your operation, if you have the office space and vehicles and all that kind of stuff, of course, it's gonna add on to that operational expense, right?
Yeah, awesome. I'm with you, Ben. I agree. I mean, I would love to see our clients, most of them near the 70s. What fascinates me is that there's a subculture of certain companies that are really maximizing net profit because they're keeping their fixed expenses really, really, really low. And, let's do the math for everybody. Actually, let me ask you, and then I'll go. What is a healthy net margin for an average size multi-op nowadays? What does that look like for you from your
15 to 20%?
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm in the range, staying away from EBITDA for a second. I'm in the range of telling people that they're normally between about 8 and 20%. accounting for on the low side, which is super low at that 8% mark, that not everybody understands that their W-2 earnings or their payroll may or may not be included in that, because you're using the right term for EBITDA. It's over somebody's head. A lot of times they don't know what's going on, but we're in the same range, right? So we see these companies that are out there that have much, much lower overhead, which allows them to give up a little bit more on that variable expense side. But I'm with you. I'll take a company with a high gross margin all day. We all want to be there. We want to be in companies that have high gross margins. Absolutely.
It just makes life easier, right?
It sure does. It sure does.
Well, I guess the other thing that I'd love to ask you about is in regards to scaling your companies, what are some things that, because we all learn from, maybe you've had a coach or a mentor growing up, you've read some books, you've been a part of courses that you've signed up for and so forth. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned that have been the biggest game changer in your business career? Let's say like the top 3 biggest aha moments that really unlock the next level for you.
Well, I definitely believe in coaches and mentors, and I've had one for the last 15 years, if not multiples. The lessons that come along the way and that get baked. This is a great question. I feel like I answer it differently every time because it bubbles up differently. The first one is to learn to delegate well and learn to delegate early, as quickly as you can, in order to go back to that trust thing. Without learning and having a positive experience of delegation, properly or energetically delegating to the right person that you sort of love to work with on your team, it's like strapping a rocket to your back. It's like you go from having something being so heavy and so stressful to all of a sudden realizing that the moment that somebody can do it better than you can, which is usually the case, by the way. There's so many people and we just all assume that we're the best at everything we do. We're not. The moment that we're exposed to somebody that can do it better than we can, we go, maybe I should have done this like 5 years ago, this delegation thing. That's the first thing. The second thing would be, once you start that machine up and you realize that you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, never turn it off. Even if you experience very short bursts of success because you went to a conference and learned a thing and came home and implemented it, or took a course or whatever it is, the headline here is never stop learning. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. And we see it all the time. People think that just because their top line is growing, they don't notice that their bottom line is shrinking like crazy, or that their number of leads is going in the complete wrong direction. Never stop learning would be number 2. Delegate early, delegate well, learn to do that. Never stop learning. And I would say lastly for today, for this context, it would be to continue to invest in yourself above all others. So the risks that are inherently involved in being a solopreneur or an entrepreneur come down to whether you're having conversations with people that don't understand you or your industry. Thankfully, we're in a business, in entertainment and production, where the ROI is substantial. And there's substantially more upside potential in this industry than there are in many other industries, even in the hospitality space. This space, for what it is that DJs and production company and photo booth owners do, has really serious ROI. So I would say that in itself is a reason to say, hey, somebody handed you $100,000 or handed you or I $100,000 and said, restart your life, whatever it's going to be. I'd be investing in me and my business above all else for what it is that I saw happening.
And when you say investing in yourself, can you define that?
Yeah, a little bit of it is maybe in that education. A little bit of it is talking about not being conservative. Let's say that we made a bunch of money and let's say I'm 25 years old again, which I'm not. 25, and I just put $50,000 in net profit on the bottom line. I can take that 50 grand and I can pump a bunch into my IRA for my backdoor Roth, which I should do, right? But by the way, yes, you should do that. Take the 6 grand plus and do that thing. But instead of putting a bunch of money into the stock market or investing in a REIT or something else, that money properly invested, if you're looking at it the right way, has returns that far exceed other things in the rest of your life. So I know some people are just fiscally conservative and choose to make the money that the company made and then pull it out and then continue to grow the company in a very, very small way. I'm not saying double down and speculate on yourself. I'm saying make your plans, and if you do what you've done, you'll get what you've gotten, which is much greater rates of return based on money reinvested in yourself and your company than in almost anything else that you can do. And oh, by the way, you're in control of it. You get to decide and course correct, which you can't do when you put money someplace else. So that's sort of what I meant.
You're giving the power of your dollars to someone else when you're investing in IRA or a index fund or whatever else, on average, 8 to 14% is what you can grow, versus investing in your own business. I mean, you can get 100x sometimes, right? Like, I mean,
that's right.
Depending on making the right choice and the right investment.
That's
love
right.
What you mentioned as one of the big aha moments, which was about delegating and delegating well, right? So essentially what you're doing there is you're buying your time back. And that's something that we love to teach our clients, that concept around, because a lot of them tend to be stuck around, well, I've just grown up with my parents telling me, if you want it done right, do it yourself, right? You've probably heard that saying as well. And the biggest mental block that we have to unlock for them first is just getting past that concept before they can even consider delegating. Do you have any sort of additional advice to provide to that person?
I think it depends.
They feel like, man, there's nobody else that can be a better DJ than me, or nobody else can sell as good as me, right?
The good news here is that if you surround yourself with people that have been successful in this game, you're going to hear the same message over and over and over. And when you do hear the same message over and over, it's easier to say, well, maybe I should give that a try. So, additional points of clarification on that is if you're going to live in a hole or live in a bubble and you think you're the best at what you do, you're probably never going to get much bigger than you are right now, or better than you are right now. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And if I am, I'm going to find a new room. That's what's happening. So delegation, it's one of the first things that comes up. You've got a drink in your hand and you're at a convention or you're talking to somebody and we start talking shop and DJ numbers start coming out. One of the first things that somebody's going to say to you, if you haven't yet discovered, is, man, you're going to need to find somebody to take care of that for you, or you are not going to be okay. Or somebody's complaining and they just start kind of shaking their head and going, you'll figure it out. So it just comes up over and over and over. And by the way, we're not special. There's no business out there that can exist alone with one person driving it. It's just not possible. Now, if you want to be that guy or that girl, you do it. As David Osborne would say, you do you, boo. Just know the rule of no surprise that says you can't be surprised when you don't achieve the same types of results that those that are trusting in people and experimenting, with and learning to delegate are achieving.
The one thing that I usually like to provide perspective on is look at any large company, the multi-million, billion-dollar companies. The CEO is not running those companies on a day-to-day basis, right? They can't be in multiple places all at once. And because of that, they have to empower staff. And also great technology, by the way, because that's another way of leverage as well, is utilizing great technology. So it's not just people, but also technology. True.
Delegate and automate have very, very clear similarities in a lot of the lessons that you and I probably teach, because just because we aren't doing it manually doesn't mean we have to hire somebody else to do it. We can also automate those things with the right softwares.
I'm curious to find out, though. So I remember early in my career, because I was the head DJ, the person that was the most passionate about it and so forth, I did want to keep myself above my staff in the beginning, where I wanted to be the best DJ because of it made me feel special. It stroked my ego, right? And now fast forward, as I've matured in kind of my career, I no longer feel that need, where I'm actually really excited about having staff that is more talented than I am as a performer. And honestly, now it's even ascended to even in leadership. I don't need to be the CEO of my own company anymore, right? I'd rather sit on the board or be the chairman and allow the CEO to actually lead the company on my behalf and empower them, where I'm just mentoring them and growing them as an individual, but then empowers them to be successful as a leader, right? Have you ever gone through that struggle as well in the early years, where you felt like, man, I really want to be the person that has the spotlight, that has all the respect?
My struggle was a little bit different. I think you just very succinctly explained the whole ball game. The whole ball game is that when you're young and you have this certain mentality, you think one thing and then you evolve. So what I'm suggesting, the moment that you think delegation and building the people up around you is not the way, you're not ready yet. But the moment that you do, and then it clicks that by building others up and then becoming, hypothetically, we'll come back to, again, better than you are, or as good as you are, or you don't need to be booked as often as it need to be. As business owners, I mean, we're not doing this for charity when you start the business, unless all of a sudden you're independently wealthy and you're just like, oh, I love doing this. But the moment that you start realizing that now all these other people are making you money with less effort than you were putting forth previously, that's the whole ball game. In leadership, it's the exact same way. And again, we don't have to villainize the idea that profit is a bad word or anything like that. I'm just saying that the moment you realize, as you're suggesting, that when you grow and then you're like, oh man, yes, I want you to do great. My career, I chose from the jump never to put my name on the marquee. Okay. So I sort of felt like after DJing for what was almost 15 years and watching my dad and some other people work for multi-ops, I knew that I didn't want to be the guy that said, Matt Radicelli's House of DJs. Like that was never me. That's why I called it Rock the House. What's that?
What inspired you to think differently in that context?
Given a presentation a couple years ago where I had to dive deep into that, it's because I realized in my teens in high school that my superpower, and I didn't know it at the time, but my superpower was bringing people together. My superpower was leading and managing. Now, I just so happened to be the headliner at Rock the House and one of them, as we grew well into my 30s. That's fine. And yes, people would call, and yes, at some point, I think it's probably after I had 2 or 3 kids, then I started to charge more. But until that point, I never did. I never charged more for Matt Radicelli. We always just sold the company. When you book Rock the House, we're accountable across the board. That was my philosophy at the time. Very different than how some of our customers operate, right? Yeah. But I never put my name on the marquee because I knew I wanted to sell the business someday. That's the core answer, is that when I started and put it in place, I knew that I didn't go to college. I just knew coming up that everything needs to have a system and a process and consistent levels of quality. And if I can't walk away for a month and come back and the building's not burned down, like, we have nothing of value here. This business is worth nothing. So that's how.
I'm really impressed because that put you ahead of so many people by just merely even understanding that concept at such a young age. That you wanted to build a business that would be ready to sell, right? That's another thing that we try to coach around as well, is that even though you may never actually sell your business, or you may never want to ever sell your business, to still build it in a way that it would be where you increase the enterprise value of your company, it's just the smartest thing to do. Because ultimately, even if you decide to hold on to it, right? Like you said, we're not running these companies as a charity. It's for cash flow, right? That if you optimize, you systemize, you automate, and so forth, you're running a more efficient company. And because of that, you're making more by working less. And that's the ultimate dream, right? Is we want financial freedom and we want to work less so we have time freedom to be able to enjoy the financial freedom. Because if you have a bunch of financial freedom, but you have no time to enjoy it, you've still lost the game.
I feel like there's this moment. It's almost like a moment of distress and aha all at the same time. When we have a business owner that it clicks with, that the list of things that you need to do and for your business, if you want to sell it in 5 years, is exactly the same thing as the list as if you want to run it well and gain freedom financially or based on time. It's the same list. So I agree. I think it was fortuitous for me that I realized that early on. And I wasn't saying I was going to sell it. I just knew that those were all the right things to build for the business to have the most value possible and to command the highest value in the marketplace to our clients too. I thought it was all the right moves. Yeah. At the time.
Love it. Well, Matt, I really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, it seems like we definitely have quite a lot in common. As a matter of fact, we both got started very young, both happen to be really into, nerds about business, and also we love DJing as well. So we seem to have a lot in common. I'd love to invite you to share with like other folks that might also relate to you. How can they reach out to you? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm extremely approachable. You can find me on socials anywhere just by searching my name. Careful not to friend my son. His name's also Matthew Radicelli. When I stepped away from Rock the House in 19 and then in the middle of COVID, I started this thing called Mentor Pods. So one of the things that'll happen is, you might see me on stage at a convention or at some sort of meetup at one of the shows. But, if you want to connect, I'm approachable. Happy to take time with anybody who reaches out, honestly, with any questions you have about the entertainment business itself, the work-life balance that comes along with the journey and the struggle. They can reach out to me anytime. What I'll do is, we'll get you a link to paste inside the bio here if anybody wants to reach out. But, mentorpods.com. It's also a quick and easy way to get a hold of me. And I'm out there.
Awesome. And let's, do you mind giving people more context around what Mentor Pods is and what it is that you provide?
when I sold the company, I actually said to my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to take like a year to figure out sort of what's next. You know, had the exit after we did the first half of the sale, then I stepped down as CEO in the middle of the pandemic, and then ultimately let the second half of the business go to the partners that were in play. And I looked around and I said, and since we're both business nerds, I said, what business can I start where I can do it from anywhere in the world, has little to no employees that are a requirement to run the business besides those that might be teaching, extremely high gross margin for everything that happens, and has almost no assets. And I basically just looked at that and then took that cross section against my skill set and thought, okay, does such a thing exist that will make this work for me? And I started looking at the idea of upping my consulting and coaching game. And I had been doing one-on-one consulting and coaching since my kids were really young. I used to take my day off when they finally went to school, and I would do one-on-one coaching. And I was fortunate to have 6 or 7 clients a year, and doing some good stuff. But I looked at it and I was like, oh man, like I don't want to feel like things have just peaked, because I did want to start multiple businesses. And I said, okay, which one's next? So I looked at the calendar, Ben, and I was like, I only have so many hours and I don't want to be tied to all those. So there's going to have to be some volume involved, which naturally got me into thinking about group coaching. And group coaching got me into this thing where I was like, okay, what if we do group coaching, but we teach it live and we teach lessons to everybody, but we give them an insane amount of individual attention and accountability. And I looked around and maybe you can tell me about something that I'm unaware of. A program like it doesn't exist in mass from what I can see. I have not been able to find a program that takes an active role in holding the hand of a business owner every single week over the course of an entire year, to the point where every single person in Mentor Pods calls me up and says, hey, I'm having a problem with this thing. Can you help me? And we're on speed dial for them. So the speed pitch is Mentor Pods is a weekly coaching program where anybody who's in the event space joins for a year. And every single week we teach a micro lesson and micro dosing at the exact same time of giving them a chance to ask any questions they have about their business or about their struggles or about their opportunities, and the entire community of their pod. There's 24 people per pod in what we do. So it's a very powerful connection and community, along with the idea that we do this thing called the continuous learning model, where every week we teach them a lesson that, while it can stand on its own 2 feet, they don't have to know something from the past to get value out of today's lesson. They build on each other, which is really powerful. And we're changing lives. We're putting results on the board, which I know is probably your favorite part of what it is that you do, but getting those reviews and those testimonials about people that say, I can't believe that I was running my business without this previously, it's powerful.
So fulfilling, right?
It is. And it sure does make it a heck of a lot easier to book additional people into the program too, right? Like the fact that it's successful. Our quarterly results just got posted, and yet again, we're still above 90%. 90% of the people that join our program are more profitable in 90 days or less. And I'll take it.
Thank you for being that driving force in our industry, because we need more of it, right? I feel like there's a lot of folks hanging out in the technical, the artisan skill set, right? DJ schools, learning how to beat match better, the latest equipment that comes out, nerding out on scratching and so forth. But there's actually a lack, I feel like, on the business side.
Yeah.
Business coaching and education. So thank you for just being another person in our industry that's really driving that pillar for all of us.
Thank you to you as well. I know that we're both filling the void in that space. I'd like to lead the things that make people talented, and the fact that they're good at the thing. I want to leave that to them. I want to teach people how to be better at living their lives, be more profitable, and just to reach new heights.
So someone who might be interested in Mentor Pods, they go to mentorpods.com. And what is the getting in touch process look like? Do they set up a call? Do they fill out some sort of form and they have to apply first?
It's open enrollment, but we definitely want to make sure that you're qualified and that it's the right fit for you. There's a very small percentage of people that we talk to that maybe it's just not the right type of program for them, or it's not the right type of program yet. But when it is, yes, mentorpods.com, you fill out some forms, you're in a good spot. We have 2 different ways. We'll either take a one-on-one call with you and explain it, ask all your questions, or you can join one of our test drives. A test drive is where we're going to get you scheduled in a group with 24 people just like you that are not yet in the program, and we teach a live lesson for free. We're actually going to give you the full experience so you can kick the tires, and then you can ask questions, and you can basically say to yourself, hey, did I enjoy that? Is this for me? Would I like to do this on a weekly basis? And you'll know instantly whether it's for you. And the program itself, it's got a money back guarantee. So like, I know that when you jump in and people are like, oh, how much does it cost? Well, it shouldn't cost you a dime, because we're either going to make you or save you money with what it is that we do. So if anybody's out there listening and you want to get a taste of it, let's jump on a Zoom call together, which you can reach me through the website or through socials, and we'll get you jumped into a test drive so you can get a taste of what it looks and feels like. Before we wrap things up, because
it sounds like they do need to fit a certain set of criteria. Who is this program not for?
Who? It's got a wide range of people in the program because we need everybody to learn from each other. There are $40 million companies in Mentor Pods, and there are people that are just getting past 60 or 70 grand because they still have a full-time job. If you're still on that low side, and I think that's where I'll focus on, maybe you're not qualified for it, it would be because you're not yet ready financially to make the commitment in the program, and that the financial stress or burden of the program, if you fall on hard times because of the seasonality of the industry, might affect or waver in your commitment in the program. So those are some of the questions that I'm asking in the midst of it. Sometimes we've got somebody who's married with kids and their insurance is coming through their full-time job, and they're just not sure if, when they take the leap, blah, blah, for next step. That person, I'm going to be very, very honest with and say, listen, unless you've got the full investment for the program set away, and you know that you can survive for up to X amount of time if you decide to take this leap, it might not be time yet. And it's the same reason I would tell somebody there are just certain things you don't gamble with when you have a wife and kids, and your commitments are different. That's why the game is completely different when you're 22 than it is when you're 50. But for the most part, I want the people that are learning the lessons from some of the young bucks. And just because people are young doesn't mean they're not sizable companies though either. I want to make that distinction. I'm not saying that. The point of the program is you're exposed to all different types of people at different phases of the journey, because that's where real learning comes from. You were talking about earlier about different groups and learning opportunities, but whether it's EO, YPO, Vistage, 10,000 small businesses, like all these different things that I've been part of, the best relationships come from me interacting with people that don't do the exact same thing that I do the exact same way that I do it. And that's why Mentor Pods is powerful. People have a commonality in each pod, but they're not all identical. So that $40 million company learns from the $200,000 company and vice versa on a weekly basis. It's really powerful.
Well, Matt, thank you again. And I would say definitely check him out. Go to mentorpods.com. The one thing that I would also like to put out there is, we do have some of our members that, of course, watch the show and listen to the podcast as well. And I would still encourage you to look into Matt's program, because I personally, and I'm sure that Matt can attest to this as well, that you benefit from having actually multiple members, that you're learning from multiple thought leaders versus just one, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times this game is about pattern recognition, right? Where these people might teach totally different things, right? In different perspectives, but certain things align across the board with all of them, which usually is the thing that can be known as the truth, or the thing that you could utilize to unlock your next level in business and in DJ entrepreneurship.
Couldn't agree more. I just need everybody to know that community over competition is the real deal. Even the gesture of you having guys like me on your show and guys like David Osborne, and we are doing our best to bring the entire industry up to where it needs to be. And, for the things that, you and I teach in different ways and to similar audiences, we take a really, really rounded approach to, we'll teach you about sales and marketing and management and leadership and HR and financials. And we're going to do it with a smile on our face and make it fun. Like what better way to help people is there? Let's go.
Definitely. Awesome, Matt. Well, thank you so much again for your time. Make sure to check out mentorpods.com. And hopefully we'll touch base again sometime in the future.
No, we're not going to say hopefully. We're gonna make this commitment on this call right now, Ben. We're going to do this again, and I need to hear you say it.
I love it. Okay, let's say what you want to do? 6 months?
I'm going to do it whenever you are ready. All right, I'll either be your backup when somebody cancels on you, or let's do it in 6 months. That sounds great. How's that?
Sounds good. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.